Hey, Diana, did you know that scaling your law firm is easy?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my number one, my COO, my right hand, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Oh, not much. We're talking about marketing again, Mark.
Well, I don't know that necessarily I would call this marketing. What I would call this is strategic expansion.
What is the this?
We're going to today talk about our efforts over the last several years to expand through the use of branch offices. Some people call them satellite offices across the state of Texas. Currently, we are based out of Houston, but we have 11 offices, branch offices located strategically around the state of Texas. Which has really allowed us to expand our growth, our potential, our marketing opportunities. I mean, that's really what branch offices are all about, is they are an opportunity to move into new markets and expand your potential base of business. So, we have done that, and we have plans to do even more of it over the next several years. And so today we're going to kind of talk about how we've done it, why we've done it, sort of the strategy behind it, some of the mistakes that we have made along the way. And, in today's world, in the world of the internet and of Zoom and of e-doc signings, in a former lifetime, say 20 years ago, I thought Houston, Texas was my market.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, I realized, well, I'm thinking too small. Maybe the Gulf Coast region around Texas is my market. Well, that's too small. Maybe the entire state of Texas is my market. And I've even gotten to the point where I think that's too small. But anyway, we're going to talk about that and talk about our journey a little bit today in terms of how we've expanded to a total of 12 offices across the state of Texas, how we've done it, why we've done it, the mistakes we've made, and the results that we have gotten. And Joy, you get to manage all of that. Ain't that fun?
It really is. And it's not, we don't do it the same way that I think other firms do it based on my experience talking to other added cousins and such. So each of your 12 are not a separate P&L. So I know that, for example, our friend up in Michigan with his elder law practice, that new office of his is going to be its own separate P&L with its own actual distinct office manager and its own almost like case docket that runs out of that office. But we do have some similarities. Obviously the marketing may be more specific to different offices. For example, in San Antonio, where there are maybe 3 Air Force bases.
A
3
lot.
Air Force bases.
Yeah.
Yep. We talk a lot about our veteran disability practice in our marketing there. And we do a lot more community outreach in terms of the veterans focus there. And so I think that you can be very specific in your types of marketing. And I know you'll talk about Mark. I probably just stepped on your outline there. I pulled a Mark.
And Diana's pissed because I just gave her the outline of this podcast like literally minutes ago. And her high C is just now hiving because she hasn't had a chance to really look at it. So it's okay.
It's probably my high S that's hiving right now, but I thought I was hiding it so well.
No.
So But really, Mark, the line that I keep coming back to that really kind of was an aha moment for me is that when you call each of your offices a billboard on the digital superhighway. Is that correct? Am I using that
Yes.
correct? So talk to me a little bit more about that, the visibility that it gives you, and why you do that, and why you call us that.
Right. So, just by way of example, you go down the highway, you see a big old billboard over there. I can tell you, depending on its location, that it costs between $5,000 and $10,000 a month to rent that billboard space. Um, but the way most people search for lawyers today um, is they go and do a Google search. That's the way most people search for lawyers today. And that's where we get most of our business. I think it's somewhere between 50 to 55% of our new business comes by way of some sort of digital marketing, digital advertising, SEO work, Google search, Google My Business, or Google Business Profile search, something along those lines. They get to us through that interweb thingy that I like to talk about.
The fairies.
The fairies, the magic fairies in the magic box that make sounds and make pictures show up. Um, and these days, most of our clients don't even come into the office. I mean, we do have a niche in the sense that we are a disability law firm. Our clients are disabled; they don't feel good; they're not in good health. One of the easy button things that we do for our clients is we simply don't make them come into the office. We simply communicate with them via telephone, via the internet, via Zoom, via any of the convenient electronic methods now that are available to us that didn't used to be available to us. So coming into the office is pretty much a thing of the past. Obviously, we still offer it, but most clients don't want to do it. They're very happy to sign up with us via some form of e-signature DocuSign type system that we use. That's so sad. I don't even know which system we use. I know we have a couple.
We use hello sign and intake. But, I do think though, whenever I'm going to go back to San Antonio again, because, sometimes they just want to bring you your medical records. They may not want to sign the contract for again, the disability practice area, but they want to bring you your medical records.
Right.
And it's been really helpful for us to have that presence in San Antonio, for example. Mark, I think though that it's not like you went from 1 to 12 overnight. You
No.
did this in a very gradual basis. I don't think you even had many when I started 5 years ago. So obviously you had a rhyme and a reason, which I know we'll talk about more in depth as we get into it next segment. But I don't think it can be overemphasized that you had a specific structure
Right.
to your expansion.
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of points that, so one, visibility equals credibility. And you want to create the visibility and where are clients looking. Well, if the clients are looking on Google, you need to be highly visible on Google. Well, how are you highly visible on Google? Well, it starts with your Google business profile, which has changed names many times over the year. It used to be Google My Business page. um, People commonly refer to it as the 3-pack, which is if you do a local search, say disability lawyer near me, it's going to give you 3 choices on the map pack. And you want to be one of those 3. Well, a lot of that has to do with geography, because most people are searching for somebody near them, or Google even starts to make the assumption that they're looking for somebody near them. Well, if you only have one location, how can you be near everybody? Well, you can't. Hence the need to expand your geography, to expand into the areas, particularly those areas that are underserved by the legal profession. Some of the more smaller towns, the rural areas, the outer line cities that don't have, as highly developed legal community as maybe a big city like Houston would have. So, you want to get out, you want to get in front of these people. So we started by trying to move into the suburbs of Houston. So our very first branch office was in the Woodlands, which for people who are not familiar with this area is about 35 miles north of Houston. A very growing, populated affluent area. So that was our first foray into this. And, we rented a office up in the Woodlands. For a while, we had a person actually out physically in that office. And we would set office hours out there. That was kind of our first foray. Um, what we soon realized is that we really didn't need to keep somebody out there regularly. We just needed to have it available when necessary. And then we started expanding from that point. And again, I don't want to step on the lead too much, but that's what we're going to go through here in the next segment is kind of how we decided to move from location to location and what we did about it, and kind of the strategy and the thought process behind it. And I will give a big shout out to my friend Seth Price, over at Blue Shark. I have used a lot. Seth has really studied this issue and speaks a lot on this topic, and I have sort of used him as my guru. Go to his company is Blue Shark Digital. Go to their website, Blue Shark. Probably something along the lines of bluesharkdigital.com. I don't know. Just type in Blue Shark Digital and he'll pop up. But they have a whole section and many guides on how to, some of the technical aspects of how to get this done without screwing it up. So that's my big tip of the day. Go visit Blue Shark Digital. But with that, when we come back, we're going to go get into a little bit more of the meat and the details of how we grew from as I call it, the mothership in Houston to a total of 12 offices across the state of Texas.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting, and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back. All right. So I think we've calmed Diana down a little bit. She seems to be smiling again, not so upset with me about getting her a last minute outline. Come on, Diana, you know the stuff. This is easy.
No, but you are buying me lunch next, so I'm excited about that.
I am taking you out to lunch as soon as we are done, and lunch is Diana's love language.
Yes, food is my love language.
You keep her fed. That's really all you need to do. Just throw her a bone. She's fine. So you brought up an interesting point in the opening segment that I wanted to circle back on, which was our branch offices are not what we would call independent, in the sense that they don't each have their own profit and loss statement. They don't each have their own set of staff or office managers. Everything we kind of do, I would call it a spoke and hub type system. Everything runs from the mothership, which is the Houston office. That is where we are primarily situated. That's where the vast majority of our employees are. It's where our call center is. And again, that is sort of the hub of our marketing efforts. So if you call Marc Whitehead and Associates, you are going to basically land in the Houston office. It doesn't matter which number you call, where you call from the state, unless you're basically calling a direct line into one of the local offices. But if you call the main number, or actually any advertised number, it's going to land up in our call center back in Houston. So it is the hub of the wheel. And all the business that is generated from the branch offices all goes back to the mothership back in Houston, which is where all the work is performed. Although from there, then it gets redistributed back out to wherever it needs to go. And obviously, a lot of our people are not in the Houston office. But again, the way that works is because technology nowadays, particularly post the post-pandemic is that we're all basically working, virtually or semi-virtually anyway. Um, Coming into the office is a thing of the past, with rare exception. So that is how we run it. I know other firms, and you mentioned this, other firms do it differently. They do it more that each office is sort of independent, may have its own office manager, has its own staff. Um, and there's good reason for that, depending on your type of practice. I mean, if you're looking at a more in-person type practice, let's say family law, or I don't know, maybe
Elder law.
elder law, or something along those lines, where there is more in-person contact, there's more personal interaction. um, I could see where you would set up a different type of system. So it really depends on what you do. Criminal law. Oh, criminal law would be a perfect example, because that is hyper local. Obviously, we couldn't handle a criminal law case out in El Paso, Texas, unless I had a full time attorney out in El Paso, Texas. Okay. Whereas with disability law, it's extremely easy to handle any sort of disability case that comes in from El Paso, Texas, from the mothership back in Houston. Nope, that's simple. So it really is practice specific about which model you choose to go with. Our particular model is that most of our branch offices, are originally staffed by intake people. So our intake team is a perfect example of um, the way we can spread staff out across the state. So we have an intake person that's basically based at the San Antonio office. So if a client does want to come into the San Antonio office, say to drop off paperwork, there is a person there to receive it, a staff person from us to receive it. But I don't staff it with an attorney. I staff it with an intake specialist, and that gives us the opportunity, because that's their job, is to basically market and sell for the firm.
Well, and I think it just, it's really, we really haven't had the opportunity, but I do think, again, to use San Antonio as an example, we did have a case manager there with the intent that she would be able to, if we had any clients that wanted to speak with a case manager in person there, come in and talk to them a little bit more. But she just actually wanted to move to Houston. So now Alondra's over here and she's very happy here in her new city.
Right.
But
That is the problem, is that sometimes your people leave you, and especially quickly, like our person from Beaumont left relatively quickly, and then all of a sudden we didn't have a staffer in Beaumont. I'm like, okay, well, we got to worry about that. So
yeah, but I do think it's very, like as you said, it's very specific, Mark. But I think that from an ops perspective, it did allow us some flexibility to recruit from different markets, and to have, and obviously every market has a different pay structure. You also get different quality of talent, different types of talent. And so it's been interesting from that perspective as well. So for example, we have a Lubbock office, and that's very much more, I think it's not a college, it is a college town. But that one's so far away from us logistically in Houston that one's been a bit of a challenge to get staffed up consistently. Whereas some of ours closer to Houston, that is Austin, Temple, San Antonio, and everything that's a suburb of Houston stays consistently staffed. But I do, from an ops perspective, the ability to recruit from different markets and have different pay structures, it's been definitely an advantage, especially when the market can get tight.
right, exactly. So I think the first basis of choosing a location, number one is there a population center there that you want to serve? We talked about when we first started. We started ringing, the city of Houston. Going to the suburbs, going Houston North, which was the Woodlands, going Houston West, Houston South, and ringing this. Basically making sure that we had all of Houston covered. And then we started moving out to some of the cities, Beaumont, Texas, which is about 90 miles away, which is a population center in East Texas. Temple, Texas, which, has a military base up there. Then San Antonio, which has multiple military bases. We've now moved to South Texas, which has a big more an older retirement demographic, which is good for us. We moved to El Paso, Texas, um, which has a military base. We opened up an office in Austin. This was a fun one. I just had an attorney just walk into my office and say, "My boyfriend and I we're tired of Houston and we're moving to Austin. What do you think about that?" And I said, "Well, I guess you're about to open an Austin office," and that's exactly what she did. So we opened up an office specifically for her in Austin. Um, you know, and just made it happen. Um, so, but it starts with picking the location, picking it strategically, finding, and it comes down to this the very specific thing of actually finding the building location. You need to find a building location that's not a known executive suite, not like a Regis or something like that, because Google frowns upon that. They think those are fake offices. And again, one of the key things here is you have to convince Google that your office is a real, legit office, and there are certain steps. And I will commend you to Blue Shark Digital for their guide on exactly how to comply with Google's requirements. But generally speaking, they want you in a real building, in a real office with real signage, with real furniture, hopefully with a staff person. And it's great if you can be the only attorney in that building, at least in your practice area. So
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that you want to like and getting quote unquote is it certified, Mark? Is that what we would call it? Getting approved by Google for that specific listing is an art. I'm sure
it's
it's more
called
science than art, but it
right,
feels like an
right.
art sometimes. We don't know why we get rejected sometimes, and I think that would be one of the things that I had to take away. Would be like, okay, well, we technically can't use that office yet, or whatever the case may be, when from an office perspective, because we're not approved by Google yet. And so, talk a little bit more about that, Mark, and how it makes sense. The photos you mentioned, the photos.
Right. So what you're talking about is establishing what is currently called a Google business profile. It has gone by various names in the past. Your Google My Business, Google Business Place. I can't remember all the names. Google has this weird thing about changing the name every so often just to confuse everybody. Currently, it's called your Google Business Profile. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to submit to Google that you have opened up an office. You have to give it, the address, and then they'll want certain things to verify it. Now the old days they sent you a physical postcard to that address, and somebody had to then take that postcard, and there was a key code on it, and you had to enter the key code back into Google so they could get a verified mailing address. I'm not certain that they still do it that way. I think they have kind of moved to a different system, but that's the way I remember it being done. I remember for the location that we tried to open up in Pasadena, we had the hardest time getting our mail, and we couldn't get the frickin' postcard. But so they first have to verify that it's a legitimate address through whatever mechanism. Again, that I will commend you to Blue Shark Digital to figure out. And a lot of times they want verification. They want pictures. They want, pictures of your office. They want pictures of signage that indicate that you have a sign on the door. They want, they might even want a utility bill. I don't know. There's just a whole slew of things that you kind of have to go to get them to certify that it is a legitimate business location. And I understand Google's position on this. I mean, it's real easy to go get a virtual office somewhere just to get a post office box and claim it's a business. And from Google's perspective, that is, they're doing, giving bad customer service if they kind of buy into that BS. So I understand from their perspective. I think this is a good thing for all of us. But it's a process, and you have to go through it. And it's not once and done. I mean, they can kick you out at a moment's notice. I've heard of people getting their Google business profile suspended. Hence, you go dark on the internet for that particular location, which is not where you want to be. So you always have to be careful about it. But you want to make sure that everything is consistent. And then once you have this Google business profile established, there are certain things you've got to do to enhance it. Number one, you need to start getting reviews for that particular location. Hopefully good reviews. I don't think there's actually any requirement that your reviews are good. You could get 50 one-star reviews, and Google would recognize that as sort of being legitimate. But I think that would be bad for business. That would be the worst thing. You really wouldn't want to have that happen.
Right. And don't you need a requirement for LSAs? I think we
Well,
know that
I'm not even going to get into the
we're gonna
LSA
get it.
thing.
Yeah, that
You
was
know,
last couple episodes
that
ago.
was a couple
So
episodes
I
ago.
think that one of the cool things that you do, Mark, is obviously with our San Antonio intake specialist, she sends out the Google review link for when she sends them to clients. She sends the one specifically for San
Right,
Antonio, and I think that that helps, increase. I mean, just makes it a lot more personable. Like Brandy is our San Antonio person, and
right,
you can see that on our recent reviews.
right. So yes, you can ask people to review certain offices. So you can direct them to certain, through using QR codes or just through links or whatever you want to do. We can request that you review us, but your review be attached to a certain office. Obviously, it's best for San Antonio people to review the San Antonio office, Austin people, the Austin office, but it's not required. You can direct people around if you're deficient in a particular office. You can direct them to particular locations if you want to. I'm not sure that's best practice, but I certainly know you can do it. But then once you get the Google business profile, it doesn't mean you're going to end up in the 3-pack, which is where you want to be. You still have to go out and get local citations. Now, citations are just a fancy word for local links. So, say for the example, the Austin office, we want to get registered with the Austin Chamber of Commerce and get a citation or get a link back there. If you can get mentioned, the opening of your office, say in the local business journal. I know Houston has a business journal. I know Dallas has a business journal. If you can get mentioned there, you can get a citation back. If you can get, say, the Austin American Statesman, the daily newspaper, to somehow mention you, great. There's lots of places where you can register your site to local places. And again, I'm going to commend you back to Blue Shark, because Blue Shark just does a tremendous job with this. But you just want to build up those local links, those local citations, those local connections, because that's ultimately what you want to do. You want to be bubbling up in the 3-pack, the Mac pack, the free listing, the free internet listing. So that's what you want to do. But you always have to worry about, especially if you truly, we do, our offices are branch offices. They are not staffed by attorneys on a full-time basis. They are staffed by staff people. You always have to, worry about Google coming in and looking at you after the fact. So always be wary. Always monitor this. We monitor all our Google business profiles on a weekly basis, just to make sure nothing goes really weird or goes really janky. But we kind of jumped out ahead of the real issue is why strategically would you want to move in any particular area? And again, some of it is mindset. Again, I used to have a very small, closed mindset, 20, 25 years ago. Houston was where I practiced. Houston is where I wanted to develop my business. If I went one county north of Harris County, which is what Houston, Texas is located in, I felt I was in a foreign jurisdiction. I didn't want to go to Montgomery County. Those people are crazy up there.
We thank you for listening, Montgomery County.
Yeah, Montgomery County. We know nobody in Montgomery County listens to this podcast. It's okay. It's okay.
But let us know if you do.
But please, Mark. Diana at marcwhitehead.com. Please just send your emails there. Send your hate mail there. So, Diana, we're talking about, the mindset, expanding your capabilities, your territory. I think in this day and age, any law firm out there that is thinking about growth and is in growth mode needs to start looking and start thinking at a minimum statewide. I mean, depending on, Texas is a big state, but if you're in some other state, I don't know why you wouldn't be looking at moving into at least all the major metropolitan areas of the state, um, because just with technology today, it just isn't what it was 10 years ago. You just don't have to basically be in the same room with your client again. We have the benefit of having a federal practice where we can go to any state, but most people, I recognize most lawyers out there are limited to the specific states that they're licensed in, but at a minimum, covering the major metropolitan areas of your state, and then looking at those secondary, what I would call hub cities, the spoke cities, like say for example Beaumont, Texas, and Temple, Texas, and in McAllen, which is in South Texas. I mean, these are places that have good population centers. But that's what I would say is that you want to start looking at ways that you can, basically cover your entire state.
Because I mean, I think what you're saying, Mark, is that people, I mean, they just want to know that their attorney is quote unquote local, right?
Right.
Like they want to know that they can kind of reach out and touch their attorney most of the time.
So when you establish a branch office, it's beyond just the Google search. It's beyond just the SEO purpose of it. I mean, like you said, clients want to hire somebody that they feel is local. And you want to ingratiate yourself into the local cities. You want to make contacts with the local doctors, accountants, all the professionals. I'll give you an example of El Paso, which El Paso is damn near 800 miles away, from Houston, Texas. But when we opened up our office out there, we flew out there. I flew out there with my marketing director at the time. We sponsored a local event. They invited us to speak. I gave the Mike the Mechanic presentation that we give, which is sort of an overview of our entire practice area. And we stayed a couple of days and we made some visits. And of course, we had a local attorney that is sort of our sponsor up there, our good friend George Farah, and his brother Milad. And they toted us around. We went to go to the boot factory, and I bought a pair of boots out in El Paso, Texas. They were beautiful. But you want to make contact with the people that matter, especially the bar associations, the other lawyers out there who can be good referral sources and be good good people to introduce you. And we were well received out there now because El Paso, again, and we did the research, El Paso was underserved for disability law. There just weren't a lot of disability lawyers out there. There weren't hardly any lawyers out there that did LTD work or did veterans work. So they were glad to see us come. They were glad to host us. That may not be how it works in every different practice area out there. I can't imagine they would just welcome another PI attorney with open arms out there. But if you picked your location right and you picked a location that's underserved, if you handle it right and if you do it right, they'll probably welcome you into the community.
Well, and I think I just keep coming back to the quote unquote local part of what we do, or of what we do as lawyers. Um, in Houston, Mark just mentioned Montgomery County and how that kind of felt like that was a bit far away. But even Houston, Dallas has this notorious rivalry, and I don't know, particularly for our elder law clients, that a Dallas person would hire a Houston attorney. And so that might be where it makes more sense to make the Dallas office a true office staffed
Right.
by a Dallas person who can talk to you about the roads and what's happening in the community and making it feel like a much more personal thing. It allows you to also recruit, I say recruit from not just your talent, but also market to different clients in a different way. Like, I
Right.
think that I go back to what our attic cousin in elder law said about why he went, just 15 miles down the road. It was such a distinct, different, I guess every state has this version of the Dallas Houston rivalry, but, I think it was maybe 15 miles down the road. It was a very small number, where they, were able to just get a completely different, brand almost by moving into this area, into this specific city and attracting those clients.
Right. And I think that's sort of the decision you have to make when you're looking at this. Again, the reason we opened up our Dallas office, which was in the middle of the pandemic, one of my staff members who was working virtually just moved to Dallas. Um, and I'm like, she goes, "Can we open up an office up here?" And I'm like, uh, "Okay." So we did. And to some extent, that has worked out. Again, this is another example of relying on your people when they move places. Is are they going to stay there? Because this person ended up moving again. So we've had some issues there with the Dallas office of keeping that staffed, and we don't have that office staffed by an attorney currently. I would say that probably you are correct. To really expand that office in the future, we're going to have to, if it's going to be truly take hold, we're going to have to put an attorney up there because that is a major metropolitan area, and it's really too far away for our attorneys to do, say, rotate and do office hours. It's just really.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I
Yeah.
think the better analogy would have been Dallas Fort Worth. Everybody says DFW, like, obviously there's an airport there with that those initials, but I mean, like they talk like it's one city, but any Texan will tell you that those are two very different
Two
cities and
very different cities.
almost two that's a reason why you
Those
would
are
almost.
almost fighting words up there. If you told somebody from Fort Worth that they were from Dallas, that would be fighting words.
Yeah, we wouldn't do that. And certainly that would be, if we needed to, we would need to open a distinct office to try to get the Fort Worth market, if, for
Right.
example, for elder law. So, Mark, you've talked a lot about this whole spoken wheel or spoken hub methodology that you have, the underserved regions. What other strategies do you think some of our listeners should kind of maybe be aware of when they consider expansion?
Well, first of all, I'm sure every state has their own bar rules about advertising offices that are not fully staffed by attorneys. And so, number one, you need to figure out what your own state bar will allow, because this is all part of the marketing piece. There's no nothing you have to worry about in terms of having a branch office um, with regard to the state bar until you start marketing it. It's only at the point that you start marketing it that the state bar gets a little snippy. And, I've learned from personal experience, they can be real snippy. I almost got a grievance filed with me by the state bar because the font on my advertisement was 9-point instead of 12-point. Okay, they can be that petty sometimes. So, you have to make sure that you comply with the rules. We just, as a rule, regardless of whether we have an attorney in the office or not, we just automatically say by appointment only, even in the Houston office, even though you can't swing a dead cat without hitting an attorney in the Houston office. I just, as a rule, put that disclaimer on every office just so it's consistent. And that's one of the requirements from the state bars. If attorneys aren't there for all business hours, you have to designate when they are there and is it by appointment only. So, you just want to cover yourself and make sure you don't run afoul of the snippy people over at the state bar. And I'll get off my horse there because I'm sure they're
I was
listening.
just going to say, they're going to come at you
I'm
for that,
certain that
petty
the
Mark.
state bar listens to this podcast. So, I'm sure they're just taking notes prestidigiously right now. But this is a good episode, a good topic for another episode. How Mark and the state bar have run into each other in the past.
Oh, that would be some stories.
This would be some stories, and I will say that my record is clean as a whistle. I am 100% against the state bar of Texas.
Let's not give them a reason to change that record, sir.
But anyway, you just got me off on a tangent. I forgot what your question was.
Well, I think we were talking about some of the strategies, but I think that you've covered them when we're talking about spoken wheel, spoken hubs, and how you've approached yours. You've talked about covering the major areas, but really you've just very broadly talked about being very strategic however you choose to do it. Don't go opening a whole bunch at one time. Make sure you get your process down correctly, especially to get the GBP, the Google Business Profile, and just being very my goodness,
Methodical.
methodical about
Woman
how
needs a drink.
you do that.
The woman
Anyway.
needs a drink.
Mark, when we close up, what are you going to do? Your 5 action steps go forward?
All right. When we come back, we will go through Diana and I's 5 action steps. So you're responsible for this as well. You can't just put my name on it. These are our action steps going forward.
All right, guys.
All right. So in the
Lesson learned.
interim, we got to take a break real quick because we get Diana a drink.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
And we're back. All right, Diana. So 5 action steps going forward. If you were looking to scale your practice through the use of branch offices, you get to go first. What's your tip?
I would say my first tip would be, I think you use the mothership. Yeah, protect the mothership. Is that what you called us?
Yes, the Houston
Here.
office is the mothership.
So protect the mothership first. Make sure that you've got a solid foundation with at least one of your offices. And in terms of number of Google reviews, make sure you're consistent with your phone number. I know that each of our listings, Mark, has their own phone number that allows you to track ROI for each office. And then, of course, we get steady reviews for the mothership. And so we always protect that listing first.
Always protect the mothership. Mine would be research your markets smartly and don't do what Marc has done, which is let your client or let your employees' moving patterns dictate where you open up offices. I mean, how many offices did I open in various places because my employees just said they were moving there? Don't let them lead you by the nose. Actually do your research, analyze your data. Use demographics. Their demographic research is actually fairly easy to do these days in the days of AI. Look for the underserved areas. Hire somebody if you need to. Blue Shark is for hire out there. They will help you set up these offices if you want. Make sure you avoid going into executive suites like Regis because Google will blackball those. So you have to look very closely. Where do I want to go? Are there physical offices out there that I can go and lease out? This can be a problem. I've tried to go into particular areas and there simply wasn't a suitable office space in that area. So you have to, sometimes you have to go to adjacent communities to reach where you really want to be. But just do your research. Don't do it ad hoc. Don't do it on a whim, and don't let your employees dictate where to put your branch offices.
My tip would be to, I guess, similar to yours. Do your expansion in, I guess, phases would be one of the ways that you would put it. But Mark, you talked about doing the surrounding Houston first before you started moving to metropolitan areas, before you moved to underserved areas. It was all very strategic in your decision making or your decisions, because it's not like it was always a goal to have more offices, but it's not like we went from 2 to 10 in 1 year. We were very strategic about those things, not only for cost and overhead reasons, but also you want to, again, each office needs to have a certain number of listings to show Google that it's a real place. And so we had to build up the listings in each place before we opened up another branch. And you also, the staffing, you have to learn the community there. And especially if you're trying to staff that particular office, you need to get it up and running before you run on to the next one. So just be strategic.
So number 4, I would say be ready for obstacles because, quite frankly, shit's going to go south on you from time to time. We've lost our leases in various places. We've had water damage in buildings that made them uninhabitable for a period of time. We've had Google question the legitimacy of the location, and we actually had to hire, I think what they call a Google approved videographer to go out and to do a videotape of the office to prove that it was actually legit. We had the Pasadena office that we could never get the postcard at. We could never get the mail. We went for a whole year unable to actually get that particular business, that particular place up and running. So be ready for stuff to hit the fan. It's not going to all go as smooth as it would seem. But what I would say is if you track your results in the long run, it's going to make you money if you do it right. But you just kind of have to stick with it and understand that there's going to be bumps in the road.
Yep. And in closing, I guess my tip would be that while it would be nice to make money, don't forget that you're really moving into an actual community. I think that we've done a lot, especially in our first building in San Antonio, to really be a service to veterans, which is obviously one of our practice areas, but invest in the community, in the things that matter, whether that's sponsoring, a local, the baseball team or whatever the case, participating in different things, just because, don't forget that you're actually there to make a difference.
Always start with your local chamber of commerce. It is kind of the hub of the local business community. My advice is to always start there and then let them guide you, because they're usually good people in those organizations, and they will help you along, and they will help find ways to ingratiate you into the community, as long as you keep paying their dues. All right. With that, I know we're getting the high sign. We're out of time. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Marc.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you hit that forward button and forward on your phone and forward the podcast to your friends. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to comment on any of the things I've said that have been offensive apparently throughout the day, because I see the eye rolls. Sorry, Montgomery County. We do love Montgomery County.
And Montgomery County's clients.
And Montgomery County clients. Send me an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Marc spelled with a C. Remember to visit the Successful Barrister at successfulbarrister.com. And please visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.